Okay, for sure. And I'm sure you're not weird at all, don't worry. Oh, wait till you see me. But I'm also like, people say, oh, I'm screwing with all this and that gets like that. But like, does that person still running? Like you're creating the surveys are so the surveys.
Before I begin, I just want to ask that you go easy on me. I'm an humble undergrad, so keep that in mind. Challenging and reinforcing the culture, the Cauldron, Witchcraft, Feminism, and Consumer Culture in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So, as a pillar of 20th century popular culture, Buffy the Vampire Slayer drew in mass audiences with its promise of a strong female protagonist who subverted gender stereotypes of the period through her independence and her strength. The show portrayed a wide range of cultic practices, including witchcraft, with the character of Buffy, who was Buffy's best friend and confidant. Despite the show's feminist themes, Buffy's depictions of witchcraft offer viewers a politically ambivalent portrait of female power. On one hand, the series challenges historical witchcraft stereotypes, reclaiming magic as a potent tool for female agency, collective action, and the construction of non-normative identities. Simultaneously, however, it reinforces damaging tropes of magic as an inherently corrupting, emotionally volatile, and dangerous force that threatens social order. I believe that this ambivalence is not an oversight on the part of the writers, but rather it functions as a quintessential case study of the contradictions that underlie post-feminist neoliberal culture during the turn of the 21st century, and how witchcraft continues to be used as a tool to grapple with the threat female power poses to patriarchal institutions. So, to begin, we will review some of the foundational theoretical lenses that I've used to study the gendering of witchcraft and understand how the series both challenges and reinforces historical archetypes of witchcraft as they pertain to gender. So the figure of the witch does not exist in a vacuum, but rather she is a byproduct of centuries of social, religious, and political anxieties projected onto female figures. In interrogating the magic-gender connection, scholar Kimberly Stratton disrupts the pervasive assumption that we see in media that magic is an inherently female domain by arguing that the gendering of magic is not a historical constant. Rather, it is dictated by the specific sociological context, power dynamics, and anxieties of a given historical moment. Consequently, the association between women and witchcraft is constructed by those who control public discourse, which in patriarchal society is men. So, correspondingly, the two theoretical frames identified by Stratton are relevant for understanding the series' main witch, Willa Rosenberg's character arc, are psychological projection and binary thinking. So psychological projection theory posits that the predatory sorceress stereotype that we often see is a result of male authors and societies projecting their own undesirable behaviors or fears onto female figures. Stratton explains that while men were the primary users of aggressive attraction spells, literary portraits consistently depicted women as the perpetrators. This process of denial and transfer allows a male-dominated culture to reject its own helplessness in the face of overwhelming emotions like erotic desire or rage by displacing these feelings onto a female other. Likewise, binary thinking frames the gendering of magic as a product of an intellectual process rooted in dualistic logic. So within that framework, man is posited as the subject, the absolute, the essential, while women are relegated to the position of the primordial other. As Stratton argues, witchcraft develops its meaning through contrast. It is an aversion of social order and an emblem of chaos. Because women are conceptually positioned as the opposite of men, who are thought to present order, reason, and proximity to God, they are naturally paired with witchcraft, which represents chaos, evil, and proximity to Satan. Thus, these historical and theoretical lenses These historical and theoretical lenses reveal a pervasive and gendered archetype that Buffy is in conversation with. The show's narrative is constantly in negotiation with these gendered frameworks, made possible by its contemporary cultural milieu. This cultural milieu had begun radically reconceptualizing the meaning of spirituality, thereby allowing the repackaging of these ancient anxieties and normative powers for a new generation of people. So the depiction of witchcraft in Buffy emerged from the shifting cultural context of the late 20th century, a period defined by the spiritual turn. This societal shift saw esoteric and alternative beliefs move from the fringes of society to the center of popular culture, making concepts that were once deemed cultic not only comprehensible to mass audiences, but also appealing. Buffy is thus a cultural product of this phenomenon, and its portrayal of magic is informed by the underlying cultural logic of modern spirituality. This phenomenon is expressed by Colin Campbell's theory of the cultic milieu, which is a cultural space for fringe beliefs. Campbell argues that over time, many beliefs that were once considered cultic, and especially those associated with the New Age movement, were absorbed into the cultural mainstream. The instigator of this absorption into the cultural mainstream was a market-driven popular culture that stripped esoteric practices of their cultural context and repackaged them for individual consumption, making them more palatable to individual consumers. So this process explains how the principles of a modern spiritual but not religious belief became the default operating system for pop culture magic, which makes Willow Rosenberg's journey accessible to a broader audience. As defined by Galen Watts and Dick Outman, the SPNR phenomenon is constructed of three core principles. Power is not derived from a transcendent external deity, but from an omnipresent inner source, conceived as a spirit, energy, or life force. In Buffy, magical ability is harnessed from within the self and the natural world, which aligns with the ontology we see in SPNR. The primary path to knowledge is through personal experience, intuition, and inner feelings, which replace the authority of sacred texts and orthodox institutions. Willow's magical education in the show is a process of self-discovery, and it's based on practical and emotional connections to other people in the world around her, rather than an adherence to a rigid external doctrine of magic or religion. And three, redemption or fulfillment is not achieved through conformity to external demands, but rather through the pursuit of an authentic self and the realization of one's full potential. So Willow's entire magical journey on the show is framed as a process of her self-actualization, where her power is inextricably linked to her quest to become her truest, most authentic self. Therefore, while the SPNR impact on magic in Buffy is noteworthy, it is not the only cultural phenomenon from the 20th century present in the series. Within the narrative of Buffy, witchcraft functions as a supernatural extension of 1990s girl power feminism. Magic provides a powerful vehicle for exploring female agency and sisterhood, which directly challenges the historical stereotypes of the isolated, malevolent A. Yet, this portrayal remains politically ambivalent, which reflects both the revolutionary potential of the counterculture and the inherent contradictions of the era's mainstream feminism. Contradictions of the era's feminism. The most potent expression of magic as a force for feminist revolution comes in the series finale, Chosen. As Kathleen Rao Carlin analyzed, Willow Rosenberg's performance of a spell that fundamentally alters, in the finale, Willow performs a spell that fundamentally alters the patriarchal logic of the Slayer lineage. So for generations, the Slayer's power was bestowed upon one girl alone, isolating her, but Willow's magic showers this limitation, and it shares the Slayer's power with all the potential Slayers across the globe, which transforms the kind of Slayer role from an individual burden into a shared collective power that women embody. Carlin characterizes this as the show's vision of a utopic global sisterhood, or a feminist remaking of the world. But this celebration of empowerment is softened by the ambivalence that reflects broader tensions within third-wave feminism itself. For instance, Carlin notes that the stark contrast between the show's idealization of sisterhood and its often negative and dismissive portrayals of mothers. So in the episode Gingerbread, Joyce and Shayla Rosenberg, which are Willow and Buffy's moms, are so threatened by their daughter's powers that they try to burn them at the stake, in like a kind of like Salem ripoff. And this narrative is a chilling reenactment of that binary thinking that Stratton identifies, where established female figures, mothers, attempt to purge the chaotic and othered power of the next generation. This is a reflection of a core tension in girl power culture, as it celebrates peer-based sisterhood, but also expresses suspicion towards matrilineal power and intergenerational feminism. So, this ambivalence doesn't just sit within the gendered context, it also extends beyond and into a crucial area of identity politics explored through magic, that of queer identity and desire. In Buffy, magic also serves as an ambivalent metaphor for queer identity. It is a vehicle for one of television's most groundbreaking coming out narratives, yet it is also used to deploy harmful tropes and reinforce heteronormative anxieties about non-normative power. So the show represents magic as a metaphor for queer romance, which is great, but then it also uses magic as kind of like a metaphor for addiction. And this kind of reinforces the stereotype of queerness as a corrupting agent. And this duality reflects the complex state of 2S LGBTQ+ representation in the mainstream media of this era. But despite the flaws, the positive impact is undeniable. Many people discuss like the way it was the first time they saw lesbian representation on television. So I'm not trying to make it seem like it's not a positive thing, it's just more complicated. As Nicole Gorfrankis discusses, the naturalistic development of the relationship between Will and Tara was a powerful source of affirmation for lesbian viewers at the time, when positive representations of lesbians were scarce. However, there are also a few kind of missteps they make. So they kill off Tara, and there's kind of this whole like bury your gays trope where all gay characters die unceremoniously, and so people were really upset that they chose to kill off like the only kind of love interest they liked for Willow. And then also the show's been criticized for bi erasure because for seasons it built up this really meaningful relationship between Willow and a bunch of different men, and then the second she met a woman, she just like no longer liked men. Anyway, this ambivalence accumulates. Sorry, I wrote like a weird mixture of 3 words in the Dark Willow arc, which can be read as the ultimate manifestation of the psychological projection that we talked about earlier. The cultural fear of unrestrained female rage and erotic desire made literal and apocalyptic. While mainstream critical reception, articulated by Garfrankis, reads Tara's death as a representational failure, theorist K.L. M. Keegan offers a counter-reading of the resulting apocalyptic rage as a revolutionary, albeit terrifying, expression of queer potentiality. Basically, Keegan argues that the show's use of melodrama is key because it provides a framework that can contain the powerful non-normative emotions that realism can't. So within this, he frames Willow's attempt to end the world not as simple villainy, but as a negative utopia, a radical refusal to participate in a future predetermined by heteronormative milestones like marriage, reproduction, and family. He argues that her rage is a desire to empty the future, seeking a blank slate of nothingness over a future that excludes her experiences of love and grief in a queer way. In this reading, Willow's magic acts as a manifestation of her queer desires and becomes a destructive force that resists queer assimilation into normative social structures. So, the show's complex handling of identity politics is deeply entwined with its self-awareness about participating in the commercialization of these non-normative identities through the rise of spirituality from the cultic milieu and into the mainstream culture. Buffy offers a meta-commentary on its own participation in the commodification of spirituality in the episode Hush. So I argue that by critiquing the reduction of witchcraft to a superficial lifestyle trend, the series solidifies its political ambiguity, as it questions the efficacy of spiritual practice absorbed into the marketplace. This critique is subtly articulated through the pejorative term, one of blessed beads. As analyzed by J.L. Leighton Winslade, this phrase distinguishes Willow's authentic magical power from the superficial and trend following of the campus Wicca group, who are more concerned with bake sales and newsletters than spellcasting. They make a joke about riding on broomsticks when Willow actually suggests doing magic. But this distinction connects directly back to the principles of modern spirituality we discussed earlier. The Wicca group represents the superficial adoption of a privatized pseudo-religion, while Willow's journey is framed as the authentic SPNR path, rooted in genuine experience and self-actualization. Drawing on Judith Butler's theory of performativity, Winslade further argues that the show connects to reclaiming of historical derogatory terms like witch and queer. And in this framework, the identity is constituted through the subversive repetition and performance of a label. So the wanted blessed bees fail because they only adopt the superficial discourse without engaging in the transformative and risk-laden performance of identity that gives the reclaimed label of witch its revolutionary power. So, I argue that by creating a distinction between authentic magic and consumer spirituality in the show, Buffy actively questions the political efficacy of a practice reduced to a marketable lifestyle choice. However, this critique is deeply ironic, as the show itself was a major product instrumental in popularizing espionage practices and aesthetics for a mass audience. Whether this was intended by the show's creators or not, it's the case. So thus, this self-aware contradiction cements the show's ambivalent cultural position. Buffy's depiction of witchcraft is a powerful, complex, and fundamentally ambivalent reflection of its cultural moment. The series presents magic as a tool for female agency and feminist revolution, but it consistently frames this power as an inherently destabilizing force, a force that echoes historical anxieties about uncontrollable female rage and desire. So, ultimately, the complex and contradictory portrait of witchcraft and Buffy shouldn't be read as a narrative failure. Rather, it serves as a reflection of the cultural tension surrounding feminism, queer identity, and spirituality at the turn of the 21st century. The show captured a moment where the radical potential of the counterculture was being absorbed into the mainstream, when ideals of empowerment were being repackaged as consumer choice, and when the struggle for identity was fraught with both revolutionary promise and the danger of reinforcing the status quo. Thank you.
At the beginning, tried to move it.